Hello everyone, I'm Joe from Exchange Core, and today I'm going to be demonstrating our LDAP package for concrete5 version 7. The LDAP package was built akin to concrete5 authentication types, which were introduced as of version 7, specifically to allow for user synchronization to your concrete5 application from your organization's Active Directory or other LDAP server. This way your users don't have to maintain one more password. It gives your IT department a more centralized way to deal with security as well. So in this presentation, I'm going to be going over how to configure the Exchange Core LDAP package for concrete5 and to demonstrate some of the features of the package, primarily though just the user synchronization and the group mapping capabilities that we have built in. So as you can see, I have a fresh install set up here. We're going to go ahead and continue to our site. Alright. I have already placed the package out in my packages directory, so I can just go to the add functionality page in the dashboard, and we'll go ahead and install that. Great. So now the next thing that we're going to want to do is configure an LDAP directory. And this will allow us to connect to our LDAP directory. The display name won't be displayed unless you have more than one LDAP directory set up, at which point it will be displayed as a drop-down menu on the login page. So if you actually needed to authenticate against two different organizations or two different LDAP directories, we have that capability built in. I'm just going to go ahead and give it a pretty generic name here. We ask that you provide a domain admin username. This doesn't have to be a domain admin. As long as that user has read access to all of the accounts and objects in LDAP that you want, that will work. But a domain admin is a sure way to get that. So if you're ever having problems, give that a try, and that should clear that up. So I actually have a domain admin account set up already, and give it its password. Great. Here's where we can configure what servers we want to connect to. So we have the ability to add multiple servers. If you have a Active Directory cluster, for instance, you could certainly set that up. You can round robin the server so that you can split the load, or you can hit them in order. If say your web server's in the same city as one of your servers and the others are remote, you might want to hit them in order so that you have lower latency. We're just going to go ahead and add one today, and I have it on my local network here, so we're not going to do anything fancy with the encryption. We do have built-in support for LDAP-S and Start TLS, and if I change this, it will automatically select the appropriate port, but that does require some additional setup. So we're just going to leave it with the generic unencrypted LDAP server here. Specifically, mine is an Active Directory server. Now, because Active Directory is so popular, we've gone ahead and at the very top, we've built in this Load Active Directory preset. And so I'm going to click that, and it's actually going to populate that field. You're going to notice that these three were left empty, but it does give a good base for the rest of these. And basically, this is just so that we know how to map your user in LDAP to the concrete5 user. And same thing for groups. Additionally, we have this user object filter, which you can modify as you see fit. By default, we make sure that the object we're looking for is a person object category. Since we're using the SAM account name for the username here, we want to make sure that the SAM account name is set, so that's what that equals star is. And same thing for mail. We need to make sure that that mail attribute is set because concrete5 does require that the user has an email address. So that's going to weed out any LDAP users, they do not have that mail attribute set. So if you're wondering, you're starting to synchronize users and you're wondering, well, why isn't this user syncing? That's often something that you want to check. So the only other thing that you actually have to fill in here is this base DN. I'm going to pop on over to my Active Directory server here. This is a server 2012 R2. And if I actually go into the Active Directory users and computers snap in here, I'm going to see my domain here. And if you actually go into the view and select advanced features and then go into properties to the attribute editor, you're going to find that distinguished name. And keep in mind this is a base DN. So if I select this, anything within here that matches my filter criteria is considered to be fair game. That's actually what I want in this situation. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in manually here. All right, so I should add this. All right, so I got a directory was saved. That means that it's when we save these, it actually attempts to successfully bind as this user with that password to each of these servers. So if you ever have a server that's down, this is going to fail and it's going to throw up a red flag here. So you're going to know something was wrong. The next thing that I actually want to do is I want to add a group mapping. You can see that we got this additional button once we saved our directory. And what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to add mappings from groups to, in our LDAP environment, to groups in concrete5. So I actually have a marketing group over here in my LDAP environment. And I'm going to say that for this website, if you're in marketing, you're going to be a concrete5 administrator. And another one that I'm going to do is I'm going to say, if you're a domain admin, you're also going to be an administrator because why not, and so on and so forth. But you can see that these are adding here. Of course, I could remove them if I wanted to. I can always come back in and add more. So if I go back to my LDAP directories list, we see that we have my Exchange Core local. I can go into there, make changes at any time, go in and change the group mappings for this at any time. All right, so now that we have our directory set up, what I'm actually going to do is pop on over to the website. And this is a in private browsing session, so I'm not logged in here, and since I was testing before, you can see my account's not active. But you'll notice that this just looks like the standard login page. Well, that's because we haven't enabled our authentication piece yet. So back over here is the admin. What I actually need to do yet is go into authentication types, and you'll see that we have this EC LDAP authentication type. There's various settings in here that you can toy around with, useful for debugging and meeting all the different needs of so many different environments. But what we're just going to do here is go ahead and enable this with the stock configs. Now if I come back over here and I refresh, you'll notice I got this extra authentication type. Well, that's not really handy if our primary authentication means is going to be LDAP. So I'm actually going to come over here and drag this to the top. And now if I refresh, great, LDAP is my default. And I mentioned that if you had multiple directories set up, you would get a drop-down. This is where that would show up. It would be right above this username, and the user would be forced to pick which directory they wanted to authenticate against. In our case, though, what I want to demonstrate is, so we set up our LDAP directory, but if I go over here to the members, you can see that I just have my admin account. That's because we only synchronize users one of two times. When the user logs in, that user account gets synchronized, or we have a job that I'll show you here in a bit that you can use to synchronize all users. So back over here on the login page, I'm going to use my SAM account name, and my password. Okay. All right, there we go. So I got logged in, and I logged in as Jay Meyer. You can see that I got this admin capabilities as soon as I logged in, and that is because that Jay Meyer account is a domain admin. So he got mapped to have the administrators group, right? Excellent. Now, if I log out as that account, and I'm going to come back over here to my Active Directory server, and I'm going to say, you know what, Joe's not going to be a domain admin anymore. We're gonna take him out of that group. All right, so he's no longer in that group. I come down here, I log in, and you can see that I no longer have the admin toolbar. If I come back over here and refresh his profile, that's gone. So you can see that our LDAP synchronization happened there when he logged back in. And that's resynchronized his groups. If I had manually added a group to him, it would have stuck. We keep track of what's added by LDAP versus what's added manually within concrete5, so that there's not any unintended side effects there, or unintended loss. So the other way, I mentioned there were two ways that you can do user synchronization. The other way is if we go to the automated jobs page. You can see here that we have a synchronized LDAP users job, and if I run this, it's going to bring over all the users that met my criteria for all my directories that I have set up. And that can be a pretty big task, especially if you have a lot of users. We've done testing with this pretty near 100,000 users, and it does take a while, especially for the initial load. So keep that in mind. There's also another way which I'm going to show you, which is a little more efficient than using this web interface. But now that I've run that job, I can come over here to the members, and you can see that it brought over my test user, my W service user, my J Meyer user, and that's great. You know, I've got all my users, they've been synchronized. If you wanted, you could set that up on a cron job or a scheduled task so that, you know, it resynchronizes them every hour, every 6 hours, whatever your business needs are. Now, the other way that we can do this is through the command line. concrete5 actually has a really nice command line interface available. So here at my web root, this should look pretty similar to everybody else's out there. I have the application, concrete packages, and updates folder. Well, if I go into concrete bin concrete5 and I run the C5 job, and if you do that with a -- list, it'll actually show you all the jobs that you can run from the command line here, right? And we have added our EC LDAP user sync job. So I can run that, and the users are synchronized. So that's a really great way if you're, you're comfortable doing batch scripting or coming out to the command line. I can tell you that this is probably at least twice as fast as using it through the web interface. And the other thing is you don't have to worry about PHP timing out or using up too much memory or anything like that, because typically your command line will have different PHP parameters as far as being able to run those larger requests. So the other thing is you're not actually hitting your web server at that point either. So there's a lot of benefits to running it that way instead of through the jobs. However, if you're just out there, you need something simple, go ahead and click that run job button. All right, so in conclusion, hopefully this demonstrates has shown you how easy it is to get your organization's concrete5 applications linked to your LDAP directories for authentication purposes. And you can feel free to view our product documentation and check out our package on the concrete5 marketplace for purchase. And I'll post links to both of those here. Thank you for watching.